Good afternoon. Thank you for your patience. We're now going to start. Good afternoon. The public hearing for the.
We're convening the meeting.
Somebody have a microphone. Good afternoon. The public hearing before the City Planning Commission is now called to order. Please turn the sound off on all cell phones and communication devices during the meeting. The City Planning Commission has established certain rules governing the procedures to be followed at public hearings. Before speaking, each person shall give their name, address, and state whom he or she is representing. Proponents for the proposal will speak for a period of 10 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents or other interested parties will speak for a period of 15 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Proponents will be allowed a period of 6 minutes for rebuttal. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents will not be allowed to rebut. No material, written, photographs, maps, etc. will be accepted by the commission or its staffs at any time during the public hearing. This procedure shall be followed except at such time when the presiding officer shall, with the approval of the commission members present, extend such time. All proper parliamentarian procedures shall be followed, including reverence of argument, recognition of speaker, and absolute prohibition of applause. All comments made by proponents and opponents shall be addressed to the chair or a specific member of the commission. These hearings are recorded and broadcast on public access television. Audio tapes and all other relevant public records are available in the city planning office and may also be available on the city's website at www.nola.gov. Zoning docket 10717.
Zoning docket 10717 is a request for a conditional use to permit height and density bonuses for a multifamily residential development in an MU2 high-intensity mixed-use district and an RIV riverfront design overlay district. The request also seeks the rescission of ordinance numbers 9367 and 10,144 MCS. The applicant proposes construction of a mixed development on approximately a 3.4 acre site adjacent to the Mississippi River levee between De Armas and Socrates Streets. The site, which consists of 3 lots on 2 squares, is currently vacant of any structures. The applicant proposes to develop the 3 lots with a site area of approximately 134,177 square feet, with a mixed-use development containing ground floor commercial uses, while the upper floors would contain residential dwellings. The buildings would be constructed with central parking garages to serve the ground floor commercial spaces and upper floor residential units. The applicant proposes to feature design components in the development that would enable the bonus height and density provided for in the RIV Riverfront Design Overlay District within Article 18, Section 18.13 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. The proposal was deferred at the November 14th and December 12th City Planning Commission meetings to allow the developer additional time to meet with the site's neighbors, make changes to the building and site design based on comments made by the Design Advisory Committee and Planning Advisory Committee meetings. To obtain the necessary documentation and approvals for the applicant's proposed use of the public rights-of-way. Prior to the December 12th City Planning Commission meeting, the staff requested additional material from the applicant to complete its review of the proposal. This information included the necessary documentation and approvals giving the applicant the use of the public rights-of-way for the pedestrian walkway, a list of all proposed uses and improvements in the public rights-of-way, detailed information for the proposed improvements on Lamarck, Socrates, and De Armas streets, impacts the project will have on the rail line along Brooklyn Avenue, At the time this report was written, the staff had not received the information requested above. Therefore, the staff has two reasons why they cannot sufficiently review application. Number one, non-compliance with the density bonus requirements of section 18.13G of the CZO. The staff cannot complete a full review of the application. That section allows for density bonuses to be granted only when the development provides special design features, including public plazas, open space, and other specific features. The Department of Safety Improvements ultimately determines whether any development includes those design features in a way that qualifies for a density bonus. This development proposal calls for a portion of Lamarck Street to be used to qualify for the density bonus pursuant to section 18.13G. On January 3rd, the staff met with the Director of Safety and Permits in order to obtain a determination as to whether the proposal meets the requirement. The Director has opined that the proposal does not satisfy the requirement since the CZO requires that special design feature be located within the site on private property, not in the public right-of-way. Thus, Lamarck Street, whether through a lease or some other agreement, cannot be used to satisfy the requirement of providing a public plaza, public open space, or sidewalk cafe. This is the case in part because the lease can be revoked at any time and the project would then become non-compliant. Secondly, this application has continuously been modified by the developer's representatives, essentially creating a moving target that the staff has not had sufficient time to review. For those reasons, the staff, due to this time constraint, the staff is unable to provide an analysis as to whether the site meets all of the requirements as stated in the CZO, and therefore, given these considerations, staff is unable to support the request and recommends denial.
Thank you. We'll hear from our first speaker, Avery Forte.
Can you hear me all right? Okay, not used to the speaker. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thanks for hearing this matter today. Avery Forte, 625 Barone Street. This has been a challenging process for this project for a number of reasons. The underlying zoning, as you just heard, is MU2, one of the highest and most intense in the city outside of the CBD. The master plan reflects that intensity of use. What this zoning does, as you all know, is encourage developments just like this, mixed use, multifamily with neighborhood serving commercial. The riverfront overlay provides even more opportunity for more density and more height. So that's the outline that we're starting with here. That's in contrast to what we've heard a lot of the neighbors express. What the developer can't do, in all honesty, is build a project to 25 feet. But what we can do is adjust the design and make changes according to their concerns. So the threshold question here was to find that balance between the visions in the zoning and master plan and to also meet the visions of the neighbors. So with that in mind, we did make a number of design changes, as staff mentioned. We reduced the height, reduced the number of units. We completely changed the facades of the buildings in terms of materials, coloration, and then we added a setback on the neighborhood fronting sides to kind of soften the massing. So I think we've come close, and we can commit that we'll continue to work toward this goal, and we'll continue to listen. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues to kind of provide more information. Thank you for hearing the matter. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
With your permission, Mr. Chair, I think we have an order that makes sense from the applicant's side.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time. My name is Philip Spiegelman. My address is 2875 Northeast 191st Street, Aventura, Florida. I am the developer of this project. I wanted to share just a little bit about the history and how I came to be here today. More than 10 years ago, almost 12 years ago now, I came to New Orleans with the intention of developing something. Didn't know what at the time. I looked at a lot of properties. I ultimately met the Kern family and entered into an agreement to develop the entire 14-acre assemblage that they had controlled. We brought forth plans to the city. We achieved a master plan that allowed for, as I recall, up to 1,500 apartments on the site, the overall site, not the specific site that we're speaking of today. We had heights that ran anywhere from 4 stories next to Algiers Point to 25 stories closer to the bridge. And what I went ahead and did at the time was I master planned and site plan approved the first section, which was the one closest to Algiers Point. Got site plan approval, and I began to develop a sales program strictly for condominiums. They were high-end condominiums. This was in 2007. The sales program actually progressed very well, and when I was ready to proceed to develop and actually construct the project, we ran right into a worldwide recession. I couldn't build, I couldn't finance, and we chose at that time to shut down. Of the original people that were involved in the project, I'm the only one left. The Kern family has no involvement here, and my original partners have no involvement. But I've dedicated these last years to trying to find a way to go forward and ultimately fulfill my vision for what I would have liked to have seen happen. As it turned out, in the intervening years, the Kern family amongst themselves entered into whatever disputes, and I wound up closing on...
I apologize.
Sure.
I'm the official timer, and I didn't know that was set to do that, though, so sorry to interrupt you.
So you can just call.
I'll fix that for all the rest of us.
Okay, very good.
So that concludes your time.
In any event, I closed on the two sections, the two parcels that are in the picture before you. And we proceeded in hiring, I'm sorry?
That's your time.
I'm done?
Yes.
I didn't know I had the full 2 minutes.
We'll have someone defer to you.
If you don't mind.
Thank you very much for your time.
Um,
I'll defer my time to him.
Also, I mean, let me just ask a question, will we do the field just finish up real quickly? What were you gonna say next, because I found that interesting. Yeah.
Well, the only thing I wanted to add was that I assembled a team of local people. My intention is to work with local people professionally, local people ultimately in building this project, and local people ultimately in managing the project. And we've engaged with a very, very qualified two young men known as Eagle Eye that are part of this community, grew up in this community, that will be part of what we're doing and hopefully continue in the future to do more in the Algiers neighborhood. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Sherman, Land Use Council on behalf of the project. I want to point out the single most significant part about this project. This has 35 unsubsidized affordable housing units out of 351 units. So when I met with the Commission last month and we got a deferral, we reduced the size of the project, we reduced the height of the project. So while the original intent of this application was for a height bonus and a density bonus, we have now eliminated the height bonus. So our height is now a matter of right height, but what we're asking for is additional density. And why are we doing that? What makes this project so ambitious is that 1 out of every 5 bonus units is for working families at 80% or individuals at 80% or below the AMI. This has never been tried in the city of New Orleans. 1 out of every 5 of the additional units is 80% AMI or below. So of 351 units, we're going to have 35 affordable units that are at the height allowed under the base zoning. And we've made major changes, new facades, based upon community input, setting back from the neighborhood. And we have 3 public amenities. We have Lamarck Street, which will be improved. We have sidewalk cafes. But the one that we believe qualifies for this bonus is that we have a public park that meets all the design standards in the CZO, Section 17, on the riverside of the project. In fact, it's 4 times as large as the minimum requirement for a public plaza. So we think that while we originally thought the Lamarck Street Public Plaza would meet the goals and the sidewalk cafe on Lamarck would meet the goals, we understand the new interpretation of the Department of Safety and Permits. But what I can tell you without fear of contradiction, and we would welcome a proviso to this effect, we absolutely meet the design standard because we have a public park over 5,000 feet on private property on the riverside. And while that was not our original intention to meet the design criteria, that's what we can commit to today, and to the extent it needs to be fleshed out, we gladly welcome a proviso. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Sherman, 2 questions. Can you comment on the staff report that all of the newest changes were only submitted to them a day, or I don't have the exact days, only a couple of days ago. They haven't had a chance to study it, and the moving target.
Yeah, that is a beyond fair criticism, and that is a product of working with the neighborhood. Listening to Mr. Dunn, the Algiers Riverview Association, listening to the Algiers Point Association, there was a series of changes made, and I want to thank Kelly and the entire staff for working with us here. We sent a lot of emails on this one because we did make a lot of changes, but we did that to reduce the height of the project, then to change the facade of the project, Our last round of changes were just before Christmas, and then we supplemented with additional elevations just before New Year's. So staff is correct.
So are we out of time for any additional deferrals?
Yes, the CPC deadline is the 13th of this month.
We have been approved by the Design Advisory Committee on the latest design, though. So that should give some comfort to the commission that the DAC has recommended approval of the latest design, and we would also gladly welcome a proviso to go back to DAC on any additional developments, elements that are fleshed out.
And so we heard from the staff report that the park in the public right-of-way is not acceptable. And do I take it from your
Yeah.
comments that you concede that point and now you're putting the public park somewhere else?
Yeah, close. So we believed that taking a beaten down street of Lamarck, which is falling apart, and putting a massive private investment to it, and either leasing it or franchising it, would create that public space to comply with the overlay, or the sidewalk cafe would comply with the overlay. You have three choices: public plaza, sidewalk cafe, or public park. So we did think that the public plaza on Lamarck would qualify. When we understood from the Director of Safety and Permits, and I believe, Ms. Butler, it was January 3rd when we got that opinion right before the deadline. We appreciate Safety and Permits clarification. We're still going to do those things because we think that upholds the spirit. But we believe that a public park that's multiple times the size of a park required, that will have all the benches and requirements of Section 17, absolutely meets it. That has never been studied by staff or Department of Safety and Permits.
Right, but that's no longer in the public right-of-way.
It is wholly on private property, 100%.
And located where?
It is on the river side of the project, and I'll show it to you on these boards. It is actually included on the site plan. This elevation, it would be this entire area, which the entirety of the area is about 10,000 square feet. The minimum requirement is 2,500 square feet, and it will be end up about 5,000 square feet, heavily landscaped, that meet all of the public plaza requirements. We have received a request, I don't know if it'll move forward or not, from one neighbor. Would we consider a dog park for a small portion? We of course would consider it, no commitment, but the park would be right here on the river side of the buildings, on private property.
Elevated from the ground.
So this area is closer to the levee, so it's a little bit higher, but yeah. You would see the river traffic flowing through.
When it became clear that the Lamarck Street did not fulfill the special feature for the design of the public space, this park is in addition to that now, or is it
Yeah.
still planned to go forward with Lamarck?
100%. We're still going to do the Lamarck Street Public Plaza. We're still doing the Sidewalk Cafe. And we are adding this section here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Gerald Baptiste. I am the owner of Eagle Eye Resources. My address is 3501 Holiday Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana. As I said, I'm with the Eagle Eye Resources Group. We are homegrown, and we are in support of this development. We are here to ensure that on the initial build out of this project, as well as the ongoing maintenance of the project, that local individuals are not boxed out and cut out on this opportunity. You know, we started this company here in New Orleans, coming back home with the intention of local people growing and, I guess you can say, enhancing this economy for better. And we feel that this project does just that for what we're trying to accomplish as a company. Thank you.
Miles Granderson, 625 Barone. Just wanted to touch on a few matters here that have been of concern to the neighbors. in the realm of neighborhood amenities, the public park, etc. I want to point out that there's a lot of retail space being programmed into the ground floor of these buildings. And it's more retail space than you would typically see in a multifamily structure of this size. And the reason for that is because the intent is to draw the neighborhood in. The building itself cannot support the amount of retail space that's programmed into these buildings. And the location is not one that will be a destination from other parts of the city. So the way that this structure works, the way that these buildings work as designed, requires the neighborhood to come in. So the public plaza, whether it meets the criteria or not, that's located on the Mark Street, needs to be activated with neighbors coming in. The retail facing Brooklyn needs to be activated with neighbors coming in. That's the only way the project works. So I want to point that out to folks, that it actually isn't something that's being tossed in to meet criteria. It's not being something that we're giving lip service to, but it actually is built into the pro forma of the project, and it's part of the intent of the project. We've also heard a few concerns about short-term rentals. We want to point out that this project is not intending to have short-term rentals, and leases are intended not to include that in residential leases. And lastly, and Gerald just spoke to this a little bit, but there will be jobs both in the nature of construction jobs and in the nature of whether they work in the multifamily structure, whether they work in the mixed-use retail component. That'll be something that's going to be provided for this community as well, which unfortunately has been sorely lacking for a good bit of time. So I just want to point out that we've been listening to the community, and even before we were listening, it was already programmed in, and this is part of what this project is. Thanks.
Real quick, you say the leases are not intended to be used for short-term. What do you mean by that? Does it mean they won't allow it and there will never be that?
Yeah, residential leases are not going to allow short-term rentals.
Actually, just information card, but green is cool. I like green. Everybody like green, right? I guess I just wanted to touch on the importance of this project. What I feel is the affordable housing piece.
Can you give me your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We know you, but the record.
Yeah, this kind of hurt my back if I try to bend down. My name is Stephen Kennedy, and my address is 927 Port Fair Street. So I guess the most important thing to me is the affordable housing aspect, especially the long-term affordability. As you all know, this city suffers from a huge crisis of folks being cost burdened, paying nearly 50% of their income towards housing costs. Recently, the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University also just recently issued another report talking about how families are cost burdened across America. Another thing I was thinking about sitting over there, this kind of aligned with the Algiers Renaissance Plan, RFP that city planning put out, which I tried to compete for, but I lost. But I think looking at opportunity sites like this, I think that this can be tremendous for the city of New Orleans in increasing affordable housing for folks throughout the city. And I also think it aligns with the smart housing mix that this body is undertaking, and seeing like how folks can be inclusive. Because most of the time what we hear when it comes to affordable housing, people want to see it, but just not in their backyard. So we got to get over the NIMBYism that often occurs when we're thinking about development projects. So with that being said, that's the information that I wanted to present to this commission.
All right, thank you. Last green card is for Cherie Tima.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Cherie Teamer. My address is 2661 Gravier Street. I've been working with the developer mostly on neighborhood engagement throughout this project. One of the things that I wanted to touch on very briefly is the fact that developments like these obviously are not normal in New Orleans. This isn't the average type of development that you would see here. But one of the things that you as commissioners have a chance to do here, and the city as a whole, is to build something, help create something that will ultimately attract young people, millennials, people in my group who don't think that there's anywhere near the city to live, that they have to move to Jefferson Parish or somewhere else in order to get something like this. Go to another city in order to get something where there's a mix of retail and a place to live where they can go right downstairs and get something. This is really not only going to be an economic engine for this neighborhood that needs the reinvestment, but it's also going to be something that's really going to support what we're trying to build as a city. We're trying to keep our young people in our city, but we have to give them somewhere to live. We have to give them something that they can actually use so that they can stay here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in favor of support of this docket matter? I have one information card, and that is Angela O'Brien.
Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. My name is Angela O'Byrne. My address is 2525 Burgundy. My firm, I'm the owner of the Perez Architecture Firm. We're the architects on this project, so we're working for the developer. The starting point for the design was to design something that was simple, modern, and contemporary. As mentioned by the staff, we're proposing an 8-story, 350-unit project. Sorry, this should have been at the beginning, but it's okay. I can add it here at the end. Given, as Mike Sherman mentioned, given the feedback from neighbors, that's why we adjusted the design in recent weeks with the setbacks above the 6th story to bring some of the massing away from the neighborhood and to soften the visual effect. So you see that floors 7 and 8 are set back from the edge of the building. We reduced density and height, and we adjusted the skin of the building from metal panels to masonry and stucco, all in response to neighbors' comments. Finally, want to touch on the public amenities that, just to echo some of what Mike Sherman was saying. Along with affordable housing, the riverfront overlay requires one of 3 things: a landscape public open space, a public plaza, or a sidewalk cafe, and we've provided all 3. The original public benefit was the public plaza that would sit over the presently underutilized Lamarck Street, even if this would not suffice to meet the standard in the riverfront overlay as stated by safety and permits. Even with a long-term lease from the city, we think it is a significant and noteworthy amenity for the project and for the public. Additionally, we have made added an asset in the form of a public park along the levee, which we firmly believe meets the overlay criteria. And the crux of the overlay is providing and retaining public vistas. And we've done that both in this public park and also in the public plaza, so that the riverfront and the levee are still completely accessible. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move to opposition. Jennifer Forwell.
My name is Jennifer Farwell. I live at 1114 Tesh Street, which is within the 600-foot radius established by the developer for community impact. I'm asking the staff of the CPC to uphold the staff's recommendation of denial of this project at this time. I attended the September NPP meeting, at which time Mike Sherman indicated that they were going to work with the neighbors, which they have been making an attempt to do. He also told us that we would have plenty of time to work things out because the project wouldn't move forward before January. And yet he put his first application into the CPC in November, and the only reason it hasn't moved forward yet is because the staff keeps kicking it back for further questions. I consider that to be the first disingenuous move on his part. Since then, they have shown unwillingness to work with the staff and satisfy their requests, forcing the staff to recommend deferrals and eventually now a denial. This is a monolithic project. It's out of scale with the neighborhood, and it will disincent further investment in the neighborhood. I don't see it spurring a neighborhood renaissance. It's one of the few parcels along that whole area that allows this kind of density. It's not allowed in Algiers Point, I can tell you that, along the riverfront, just in our neighborhood. And we have a lot of blighted commercial and residential properties. And because of the new Gulf South studios coming in, people are actually buying those properties and they're opening businesses and they're starting to fix them up. But if they have this large project to choose from with this fancy retail, it's going to definitely have a negative impact upon the neighborhood, which is largely, most of the residents are elderly, black homeowners, and residents. So it is unique zoning, And we are basically have a target, and for that reason, I feel that it's inappropriate. You can't change the zoning today. I wish we didn't have that high-density zoning. I wasn't living here when it was done in the master plan, and we now have to wait 5 more years to try to change it. But we can't, and we can't even stop the project. But what we can do, and what you can do, is say no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? You say it does permit the high-density zoning, and it's zoned for this, so.
It's permitted
Yeah, so under what grounds should we deny it?
because well, they're asking for additional bonuses, and I'm asking for the denial of the additional bonuses. You can't stop the
But so
project.
you don't mind the general idea?
Oh, no, I'm opposed to it completely. But unfortunately, I have no grounds to argue on that merit. Thank you.
I have a question also.
Sure.
I want to clarify why you feel that there was this disingenuous nature relative to what you were told in terms of the project.
Sure.
That's a pretty serious accusation when you come before a planning body such as ours, which is requiring a lot of the developers. So what were you told that you feel was not corrected?
Either Mike, I believe it was Mike, it might have been Avery, made the comment while there was significant opposition at the meeting. It was very well attended. And we were talking about working with him, and he was talking about trying to satisfy our objections. And he said, there's plenty of time to work on this. The project won't move forward before January. And obviously that was not the case because they put their first application into CPC in November. So I felt that was.
What was your interpretation of the fact that it would not move forward before January? That we would come to this date, or do you mean that no paperwork would ever be submitted?
I assume, yes. Well, I think that most of the people there assumed, and it may have even been referenced, that if we were going to have that long of a time to work with the neighbors, my assumption, I think that of others, was that they were not planning on putting their plans into CPC until the end of the year, or the beginning of 2018.
Do you feel you've not had time as a neighborhood to consider what was brought before you?
Well, honestly, I was not involved in that. It's not part of the group that formed. I just moved to the neighborhood and was not given that opportunity. I asked them what they feel, and they still feel that it's not ready at this time. To try to use a public right-of-way as a community benefit at the very beginning, and to me, there was just too many elements of this project that were not properly orchestrated for what it's intended to be and what the laws of the city allow, that I don't think they should be rewarded with this additional density at this time. Thank you.
Next speaker, Robert Booms.
Good afternoon. I'm representing the Algiers Point Association. I'd like to speak, but I think you should probably hear from the Riverview Association first. They're the most directly affected. With your leave, I'd like to call Alex Dunn, and then I'll follow him if that's permissible.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Selico Dunn. I'm president of Algiers Riverview, also president of Murray Henderson Funeral Home, which is in Algiers on Tash Street.
State address for the record.
1209 Tash. I live at 508 Park Boulevard in Algiers, not very far from the project. Well, let me first of all thank you all for allowing us to have some say and some input into this, because it's really a big issue for our community and for the people in our community. And there's a lot of elderly people, homeowners, who are afraid because where that location is, there were homeowners there, many of them family members of people who are not there now, and they had to sell their homes because of the World's Fair in '84, because of the gondola, and those people were misled to believe that it was an eminent domain issue, that the government wanted to get that property so they could do this transit thing, and also I hear affordable housing, being used a lot. Well, in the 60s, my parents fought against another program that was going to bring affordable housing to Algiers with the same amount of type of density, and that was the Fisher Housing Development. And it really changed our community My family's been there for 7 generations, and it was just too many people in such a small area. And we're looking at a similar type of situation here. There's going to be a lot of people in that small area. And not to talk about the infrastructure problems that exist there now, we currently, as president of the Riverview Association, our seniors, many of them not online and all this, they call and say, hey, look, the drain is smelling bad again. Well, we have to get the sewage and water board to come in and pump it out and stuff because sewer lines are burst and it's seeping into the drainage. There's just a lot of infrastructure issues that are going to be even greater once you put all those people in that area. Also, too.
Thank you. That concludes your time. Unless someone wants to see time or.
Oh, I mean, must have been Northern talking fast enough.
All right, what's your name?
Alex Dungeon.
Okay, well, but the whole matter is, and might I say so by time, the developers have been working with us. We've been meeting with them, and we've been hashing out a lot of issues and trying to come to a win-win situation because that is privately owned property, and folks have the right to develop their property. But the height, first of all, with the 85 feet, we fought a long time to keep it at 25 and keep it from being recoded to industrial. And somehow, we don't know, I've been asking everyone, when did it happen that it got changed to 85 feet? But with that being said, it's just a lot of people in a small area. And that could be a great development, and it could be something that would attract people from other areas to come. Now, it's just folks who are going to be going there, go to sleep, wake up in the morning and leave and go to work and come back and do the same thing. Because there's nothing else there but a quiet Bay-run community. And we just think that, a little bit more study, a little bit more time, may come up with something that could encompass retail, residential, and also entertainment that would draw people to come into the area. But right now, it's going to be, at some point in time, another development that folks not going to like, that they dump in Algiers and end up going to be a bad deal. And also the fact that the fact that it will become short-term rentals, because if I have a lease there, nothing will stop me from privately leasing out my spot, for folks and stuff, because it won't be able to be policed. Even you put it in the lease, how will they actually police that? But it's just not the right thing. It's just not the right fit as it currently is being designed for the community. And we hope that you all help out. And we thought this was going to be deferred because we was ready to bring a busload of people with T-shirts and signs and stuff, but we heard it was going to be deferred, so yes. Well, thank you again, and I just hope you all give us some helpful consideration because our fate lies in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
For staff, while the before the next speaker, I was looking for in the report, just how many units is the bump up in density, how much does that allow? Is it a percentage?
By right, the site would allow 167 units. And they're proposing, the latest iteration is proposing that to be 351.
Okay, so there's no upper limit to the bonus in the code. It's just
what the bonus gives them is they would not be required any minimum lot area for one minimum.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Robert Boones, 232 Pelican Avenue. I'm the immediate past president of the Algiers Point Association, the vice president at the present time. We are opposed to this project, and we are much in solidarity with the Riverview Association. Riverview and Algiers Point are neighborhoods that are currently considered some of the hottest residential properties in the city. And we would like for the quality of those neighborhoods to be maintained. We do not see this solid wall of buildings that is contemplated along this river here as being helpful to either of the communities, either Algiers Point or Riverview. As far as Algiers Point is concerned, there's another large property downriver, which if this becomes a model for that property, we'd be here with a bunch of signs and people as well. the offer now to put a park behind the facility is kind of useless. First of all, the issue of the use of Lamarck Street is unresolved. It's currently there in a bad state of repair. And how do people from the neighborhood who want to go to that park access that park? They'd have to somehow get up there on the levee and come back down to it seems to me. In addition to that, Brooklyn Street, which is in front of this property, is in a very bad state of repair. There's no proposal to address that. And there's an old set of railroad tracks that's sometimes used to back up trains that's also between Brooklyn Street and the project. So these are all unresolved issues that need to be addressed. The whole project is just not family friendly. It is unattractive. It has way too many units for the lot size, as the city staff just indicated. It's way over. And just because they're offering some low-income housing as part of that component, that doesn't make any sense. Yes, low-income housing would be nice, but they could reduce the number of units and still provide low-income housing as a part of it. So we strongly support the Riverview Association. This project is way premature. It needs to come back here. They need to pull it, and they need to start all over again. Because right now, if you vote against it, it's going to go to city planning and become a big political hot potato. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Skip Gallagher.
Hello, my name is Skip Gallagher. There's a second vice president of the Algiers Point Association, and that's me. I live at 516 Belleville Street. There's a couple of issues I'd just like to bring up. The riverfront overlay, which is allowing some of this, was opposed by both these neighborhoods and most of the city where it was imposed. As you know, it was sued, it was removed, it's now being fought over, and it's likely in the future that that will be revoked and removed. It was never supported by the neighborhoods or the residents. It has no positive benefit to our communities. That's what this is operating under. There's some other problems with this. One of the most common comparisons to these buildings were 1950s Russian housing. It's not attractive. It's not nice. It has been modified. It doesn't look a lot better. Disingenuous came up. Disingenuous. This meeting happened in September. We had multiple meetings after where no revisions to the plans were made. I went to a meeting in December where no revisions were made. So neighborhood input was sought, received, and no changes were made. We're here today, and they're saying changes have been made, which apparently city planning has been provided with. But the community hasn't seen them. The community has no idea what they are. And while they are there, they're modest. They certainly don't fall within what the community was asking for. These meetings were relatively well attended. I think this process has to start over, and you have to have sincere meetings with the neighborhoods and then ask what they want, what they would like, what they would accept, and then come to some sort of real and unique compromise for this project and then move forward. This is not the way to push something through, but this is what's done. Some others, the pictures here show some green spaces. It's important you realize those green spaces are not owned by the property owners. Those green spaces in front of the buildings are owned by other people. They are not part of that project. Almost every piece of that property is paved over. Right? There is very little space in there, and what they've been counting is Lamarck. And this picture is deceptive in that it shows green space, which is not truly part of the project. It's owned by other people.
That concludes your time.
Can I put one more point in?
When you final, let me just ask what your point is.
The railroad there, they have no access. If that rail parks there, there is no way for those residents to get out of that apartment complex. And that rail line right now, they can park a train there. They do not have any oversight or any agreement with the railroad to stop that process. And you can imagine, say if there was a fire in the building and the railroad had a train parked there for an hour or two, that would not work out well. That must be resolved before they can move forward with this. Thank you very much.
Mike Sherman again on behalf of the project. This project falls, there are three issues before the commission: design, height, and density. We have taken height off the table. We're building to what's allowed in the base zoning. The design, we've heard a lot of opinions, has been recommended for approval by the DAC. There's been multiple visits to the DAC. So what this comes down to is a disconnect. And I want to fully acknowledge that disconnect because it is a good faith disconnect. The master plan and the base zoning allow 85 feet. It's a mixed use 2 zoning designation. I want to, for the neighbors, I want to acknowledge and respect the fact that many do not like what the master plan says here. I think Ms. Farwell said it best. I want to acknowledge that many do not like the MU2 designation, but that is what we have. So the reason we talk about affordable housing so much when we go from 167 to 351 is because we're in a new era. Affordable housing is one of the crises in our city right now. It was announced as the top policy priority by the mayor for this year, one of 2, and the council. Low-income housing tax credits are shrinking. Federal CDBG funds under the Trump administration are shrinking. Home funds are shrinking. The availability of 221 D4 loans, there's fewer city dollars. So what the city planning staff has done expertly in the new CZO as a general policy is use density as bonuses. And Commissioner Brown, this is one of the unique overlays where the density is not formulaic. 5% of units gives you XX reduction in lot area. This is one where if you meet the design criteria and you're in this overlay, the lot area standard per dwelling unit standards go away. So what this developer is offering is something rather unprecedented and ambitious in the world of affordable housing. Past projects that have come before the City Planning Commission have offered 5% affordable housing for 30%, 40%, 50% larger density bonuses. 1 out of every 5 of the bonus units is for individuals or families at 80% of the AMI or less. So what it comes down to is an 85-foot building is allowed here. Apartments with ground floor retail are allowed here. And the issue before the Planning Commission is density. And it's a trade-off of density for affordable housing. I'm going to commit to the Planning Commission. I know the developer will. We're going to keep working with the Neighborhood Association. I want to thank again publicly Mr. Dunn for taking a lot of very passionate views from many, many people in the neighborhood. He's right. There's a lot of people really passionate. Some people have told us they want single-family homes and doubles. They want single-story retail on this site. That's just not what the site's zoned for. That's not what the master plan says. So what I'm asking the commission for your support today is let us build this project at the higher density level with affordable housing. Because 10 years ago, that last project was high-end luxury condos. And I feel a whole bunch more proud standing up before you on a project with the largest provision of unsubsidized, non-tax credit affordable housing ever attempted, to my knowledge, in the city, than if it was a bunch of luxury condos overlooking the city. So I ask for your support, happy to answer any additional questions, and we appreciate your time, and you know you have our commitment to continue working with the Neighborhood Association on every other issue, which are good, valid issues.
I have one question. Why offer the affordable housing only on the additional 184 units? Why not have affordable housing on the 167 units that you can have right?
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't feel right to say, when I build 167 units, they're all market rent, and then if you give me 184 more, I'll give you 35 affordable housing.
Yeah, great question. So the 10% in city law is of the whole. So of the 351 units, that 35 is 10% of the whole. So it actually is on the whole. I'm choosing to suggest it's 1 out of every 5 of the bonus units, to suggest that the second you go from 167 to 168, you've only gotten 1 bonus unit, but 16 affordable. So the way this bonus works, in this overlay, the second you go from 167 to 168, it kicks in 16 affordable housing units. So no developer would ever do 168 or 170. You would never do 180 or 190 because you're not getting any bonus at those levels because you have to compensate for the first 16. So we don't get a bonus unit until we cross 180-ish. And to make the numbers work, it is 10% of the whole is the city law, and 10% of the whole for this density level works out to, of the bonus units, 1 in 5 is affordable.
And I have another quick question, Mr. Trimble, and it's probably just me not understanding what, you said you would put in a proviso. How are you doing that and how does that work?
Yeah, we would absolutely consent to any provisos that the Planning Commission would attach to any motion made today, guaranteeing that the public park met or exceeded the public plaza standards in section 17 out of good faith, because what the staff was studying, in fairness to Ms. Butler and the staff, was the public plaza, and it was determined, I think, the day before your staff report was due, it was that close, that the public plaza on publicly owned land doesn't qualify, and that a sidewalk cafe on the sidewalk doesn't qualify. Go figure that one out. So we are switching the basis for our bonus. So to the extent that there was an additional protection for the neighborhood and the community, that would have to go back to the DAC. We would gladly accept that proviso if it was made as part of a motion.
Mr. Sherman, can you explain how residents in the neighborhood would have access to the public park?
Yeah, so may I point?
Yeah, you can bring it here.
Yeah, this might be an even better view. This corridor on Lamarck will always remain open, so you'd be able to come here, but the primary access is where the neighborhood already accesses the levee. They would come up here, and these are the entrances to the levee. This is the bike path up to the levee. It splits off, so the public park is at the foot of the gateway to the levee and the very well-used bike path. Just a little bit further down is the ADA ramp, but it,
Would that be built on River Street?
Someone asked that question. We will get our surveyors to answer that question, to overlay where the former River Street was. I don't have the surveys. I don't feel comfortable.
And these two parcels that were asked about?
So those two parcels are privately owned parcels. This one over here is Entergy Louisiana. This is 4 lots. For the commission, I apologize. This is Entergy Louisiana. This is 4 lots owned by 3 separate individuals or groups. And the developer has been in touch. The Eagle Eye Resources guys, who were very humble, they were featured in Preservation and Print for the historic rehab work. They are also in touch on behalf of the developer to try to acquire some of those to create additional space. There'll be no development planned on those.
Mr. Sherman, I have a question. What about the mediation for, I guess, the railroad that's existing?
Yeah, this is a really frustrating line. This is the New Orleans and Gulf Coast Railroad. It's a former UP property. And this is the railroad that's the bane of the existence for all of the city of Gretna, as well as many folks here. It doesn't serve any functional use anymore. The Perry Street Wharf does not get rail service anymore. So the primary use of this railroad is the switching station. In about 30 to 60 days, the Regional Planning Commission will be issuing a report. That report will be for a relocation, the environmental review for the relocation of that entire railroad down towards the Port of Plaquemine. So by this summer, it is possible that the environmental report for the railroad relocation will be complete. At that point, it switches to a funding phase. It would be our anticipation, there is laws at the city and state level that the railroad cannot block any public crossings. Well, one law is 10 minutes. I believe there might even be a 5-minute law, but there's definitely a 10-minute law. Those trains cannot queue and block in the development for more than 5 or 10 minutes. But it would be our long-term goal, and we've met with the Regional Planning Commission, the mayor of the city of Gretna, who's closely following this, and we've talked to the railroad that when that relocation happens and that switching yard right under the bridge is relocated, there would be no more rail cars down there because there's no more functional use of this spur. We do not have a timeline on that, but the environmental report, which is a significant step, will be out imminently on the RPC website.
And one last question, I guess. The last report that was given to staff, I know it was like right before a holiday. Were you able to get those changes and modifications out to the community?
Yeah, we emailed those, and I can find the date, but we emailed them to the leadership of the neighborhood association. And I want to acknowledge, when you make changes like that, it's not as much time as I wish we could have given everyone. So I want to acknowledge the concerns about late changes being absolutely true. But what those changes were less height and less density, more balconies, new facades, things that were moving in the direction of the feedback we got, not away from it.
And what was the original proposal for as for the units? When you say less density?
Yeah, there's been a couple different numbers. The most recently presented one was 386 to CPC. There were numbers higher than that in earlier phases, but 386. We took out about, I guess that makes it about 5% of the units. Is it 10%? We took out 10% of the entirety of the units.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions?
Thank you for the presentation and the time. I've been through the packet now a couple times. Was there a neighborhood association or a neighborhood group, individuals have come and spoken? Was there one of the groups associated with the neighborhood that was in support of this? We've heard a lot. I didn't see it in the meetings that you did hold or in the letters. Talk to me a little about what the neighborhood support was.
So there's a number of interested parties. The two relevant neighborhood associations in the immediate vicinity are Algiers Riverview. Its president, Mr. Dunn, represent them today. They are not in support of the project at this time. We want to earn their support, and we're committed to trying to do that. The other group, which is just so nearby, where this is precedent setting for them in their opinion, is Algiers Point Association.
Right.
So there are no official neighborhood associations at this time in support of the project.
Thanks, sir. Well, just one more question. When you talk about affordable units, will that be 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms? What kind of units are we talking about?
Yeah, we might be able to get you a mix. This is the most aggressive requirement for affordable housing anywhere in the city code. I think there's a mandate that at least half be 2 bedrooms, which we meet. And
We're about 65 ones, 35 twos, and if I further understand, we have to distribute the affordable units throughout the...
yeah. So no studios in this project, 65 ones, 35 twos, and I think half of the affordable units are indeed going to be twos according to code. I was thinking about that.
There's a requirement that 50% of the affordable units be 2 bedrooms.
2 or more, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions from any other commissioners? That would now close the public hearing portion of the docket matter. Commissioners, any comments, motion?
Question for staff. This is a density bonus that is not based on a calculation. It's just what's been asked for and we're asked to respond to. There's no particular calculation. Am I right in what was asked before and answered? I mean, because it looks like that
10% of calculation.
like this would be basically 100 or over 100% bonus. Am I correct in my calculation?
If I can just respond. So I think Mr. Sherman explained it correctly that the density bonus that is made available through the rear front overlay district there is a height bonus that they are not availing themselves of, but there is also a density component, and that is measured by density is usually measured with residences as a lot area per dwelling. So what the riverfront overlay does is, if the public benefits are included in the project, the applicant is entitled to a waiver of the lot area per dwelling unit. So it doesn't waive any of the height or setbacks or anything like that. It just means that they can add more units within the envelope that exists. So that's what they've done, and they've reduced they've designed it so that they can include more units than would otherwise be within an envelope.
I have a question for staff. What prompted the meeting to take place on January 3rd with safety and permits? And is there a reason that it didn't take place earlier?
Sure. We've been in, since this application was submitted, we have had a number of communications with the administration about first of all, and our concerns right from the start was when the applicant came in and proposed using Lamarck Street as the public plaza that was going to satisfy the bonus requirement. That raised a number of questions for us because it was publicly owned property. And so, first and foremost was, because it's publicly owned, does the city have any interest in that property being used in that way? So we talked to we had communications with the CAO at the time, Jeff Hebert. We had conversations with Real Estate Records, and what was basically our initial concern was that there was no city responsible party that had said this is something that we are okay with as a city. And kind of put a broader context on it, whenever we have design advisory committee applications, planning advisory committee applications, city planning commission applications, when applicants, private sector applicants, are seeking to use public property for their development, we require the appropriate city agency to weigh in and essentially own the application with respect to that public property. It's not that we weren't pushing back, it's that our concern was focused on whether or not the city even wanted to consider that property being used for a public benefit, like in that way. Once and that was a broad inquiry, whether the city wanted to sell it, the city wanted to lease it, the city wanted to, do whatever. And so once the word came back from the administration that the city did not want to sell it, but would be open to the idea of some sort of a lease arrangement or some sort of another arrangement, that's when we sought the determination from Safety and Permits whether that was something that satisfied the requirement.
So I have a question of staff as well, or maybe two. Has anything that's been said here today, so let me back up. My impression is the staff is saying to us, this is too fast a moving target, we haven't had a chance to study it, we can't evaluate it and say that we recommend approval.
So, yeah, our denial is based upon our inability to determine whether or not this meets the legal requirement for granting density bonus, period.
Okay, and then my question is anything that's happened here at the public hearing, the testimony, et cetera, changed that conclusion on the staff's part, that recommendation on the staff's part?
So what it hinges upon is the extent to which that park that they're talking about, which we have no plans for, which we have not had any chance to do any analysis on at all, whether or not that meets the requirements that the zoning ordinance provides for, and that's really the issue.
Is the park, as opposed to the numbers?
The numbers of
going from 167 to 351. So if the park meets the requirements, then the bonus, the going to 167 to 351 is of right.
So assuming that the height, the building setbacks, all of that is compatible, consistent with the zoning ordinance, yes. The numbers is really a function of less of, with the elimination of the ladder area per dwelling unit requirement, they can put as many units in as they can fit within that envelope, within that legal envelope. So from our perspective, if the envelope is consistent with the envelope requirements of the zoning ordinance, and that's where our inquiry ends, that in terms of the numbers, sizes are actually comport with the building code.
So it's the park is the key from staff's point of view in terms of not being able to have had enough time to study.
So that's the main one, yes, I think,
Anything
and
else?
the assumption that we're making is that the plans that we haven't had a chance to look at are in all other ways compliant with the zoning ordinance. We would absolutely have to do our overall review and make sure that the changes that have been made are all consistent with the zoning ordinance.
Let's leave aside those, which assumes they can be done. With the park, can that be done through a proviso, as was suggested?
Technically, it could. We would not recommend it. Our recommendation stays to it. And the reason is because it
If it were done through a proviso, how would you ever be able to evaluate it, because it would be on its way to the council?
Well, it'd be on its way to the council and hopefully the council would adopt the proviso. That's not a given. And we would have to do it in the back end once they've received an entitlement. And if the decision was made that they didn't meet that standard, then they've got an entitlement that's been adopted, and we run into an issue of having different sections of the city being, put against each other to interpret what is, there's an entitlement that's been granted, but we're not able to move forward, so that puts us in a bind.
Can I ask Rob or something to do? If we don't approve this notice, what we can do, and nothing we can do. So it's either up or down, yes or no.
Or no decision.
Or no decision, or up and down with the either proviso or proviso.
I'm looking it up.
Decide to pronounce it.
So just to that point, council is advising that the applicant can request. There's in the charter, there's a 90-day provision that we are still within. It's just our zoning ordinance. So long and short,
There
it is
could be an extension.
But it has to be required by
the applicant has to request it.
Should I ask the applicant whether they would make such a request?
All eyes are. So what is that? I think that means it's a proviso, what is that? It's a horizontal line. Let me ask. So now we've got that. So Mr. Sherman, are you evaluating that?
I am.
Good. I just want to make sure you heard.
Yeah,
Okay.
you definitely do. Take a short break and read our email.
The developer would like to show good faith by gladly agreeing to a 2-week deferral and get the plans in right away for the park.
So what right away means, because
Yeah.
our review process.
I'm gonna ask the architect and have her get coffee for her staff.
We ask for a month so that we can do our.
Don't I remember 2-week deferrals gets up to like, you have your report
We asked for a
done in
month.
3 days?
Yeah, today's the internal deadline to get the report stuff.
Yeah, I don't think.
May I respectfully ask for 2 weeks today while we work out the timeline. If we cannot get this in immediately, we'll have to come back in 2 weeks.
I think honestly, it's, what we just heard is literally their report for a meeting in 2 weeks is due tomorrow. And so even if,
Sure.
if Perez Architects could produce the plans, they'd still only have 24 hours.
Why don't you tell us whether you'll give us a month or not give us a month?
Let me check.
Okay. The answer could be yes or no.
I know it's provided.
We have a month.
Okay.
I have a motion.
I second it.
Let's make sure they're. It hadn't been made yet because we're waiting for council to.
In theory,
Are
it's
you-
to put it off
are you
for a
okay?
month while
For the
they
month?
look at the park, yeah.
Then I'd like to move deferral of this matter for 1 month to the meeting, 2 meetings from now. Not the next meeting in 2 weeks, but the one after that in 4.
That's February 6th.
On February 6th. As requested by the applicant, so the record would reflect that the applicant requested it because that's what the charter requires.
There's a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Steve, second by Commissioner Isaacson.
I have a question regarding the safety and permits process. That assumes that we will attempt to get a, determination from the Department of Safety and Permits relative to that proposed park space.
So we can certainly, yes, I mean, we will do our own analysis, and then if we have concerns about it, we typically would go to Department of Safety and Permits to do that. If you want us to do that,
I'm asking for it to be directly incorporated.
we can certainly do that.
And I'm also asking, to the extent possible, that staff would have a statement relative to, of course, whether the requirements meet the comprehensive zoning code.
That would be a recommendation for approval. That's what our recommendation for approval.
No, there's more issues on there than just that. Okay, that's fine.
Any other additions by any other commissioners?
Can I add one more thing? Just because we're talking about us receiving plans in time for us to be able to review that, if we could get some finality in when we need to have plans, and then refer to you all plans.
Say by the end of the week.
By the end of this week?
By Friday,
Close the business Friday.
by 5 o'clock on Friday?
So I'm gonna incorporate that into my motion. The plans from the developer would be received by 5 o'clock, by the commission by 5 o'clock this Friday.
And for clarification, the plan that we're submitting is the public park on the riverside, which will form the basis for the density. For
Further
complying.
clarification,
Yeah.
we want final plans that we can review so that we're all on the same page
Got it.
about what we're doing.
Okay.
I think it would include setback and all the other things that go into
Yeah, full
evaluating.
plans, whatever's changing.
That's fine.
Mr.
And this
Green-
will-
Mr. Green wants them to, the staff to say whether it meets the requirements of the code or not, so we need.
You know what I'm most
plans.
concerned about is that when we come back in a month, that we know what the Department of Safety Permit says about it.
Yeah.
I know you said you would address that issue, but I'd like to be, I don't know, it's not necessarily incorporated into the motion. You're looking at me saying that you'll get it, that's fine.
No, we will do that.
That's fine.
Okay.
And we look forward to additional community engagement for the neighborhood associations here, so we'll make good use of that time.
So the motion, do you accept?
Second,
Mr.
yeah.
Second, that the motion would include a requirement that developers submit sufficient plans to allow the commission's review by this Friday at 5 o'clock. Submission to the commission, staff.
I accept that, yes.
All right, there's a motion by Commissioner Steve, second by Commissioner Isaacson. I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried.
Thank you, ladies and
Thank y'all, thank y'all. The city code says, according to the law department, that the developer can request, but we can't take no. So when you can ask, is that correct, that the code says that it could be the charter, I'm sorry, that, not that we can defer it, but that the developer has one more right.
Next docket matter.
Do we have any more rights?
We're still in meeting.
Applicant, it's the applicant's application.
Yeah, the
Please cease all sidebar. Zoning docket 00118.
Zoning docket 00118 is a request by council motion N17-542. This is a request for a text amendment to the comprehensive zoning ordinance to remove public transit wait station as a defined use and its regulation in the comprehensive zoning ordinance. The proposed changes would apply citywide. As defined, this use as a public transit wait station is a transit stop that is typically located on street at the curb in a median designed with a shelter sign or lighting. Currently, in all districts except for the CBD district, a public transit wait station is a conditional use. Therefore, permission to construct a transit shelter necessitates the approval of an ordinance by City Council per Article 4, Section 4.3.d. Both members of the public and elected officials agree that the current process is overly burdensome and that the current regulations in both the CZO as well as the City Code inhibit the development of greatly needed transit shelters along the city's transit routes. Since by and large transit shelters are located within public streets and not on private property, it is more appropriate for them to be treated as street furnishings and to be permitted as such through provisions within the city code, as opposed to being regulated in the comprehensive zoning ordinance alongside other land uses. The staff is supportive of the motion and the removal of transit wait station as a defined main use within each of the city's zoning districts. This support is conditioned upon there being a supplementary amendment to the city code, which would outline a revised process for the approval of public transit wait stations located within the public right-of-way, as well as guidelines for the permission of general advertising on shelters in certain locations. The representative of the mayor's office is here today to answer any questions related to the proposed city code amendments. The staff does, however, recommend maintaining passenger transit wait station as a permitted accessory use within the zoning ordinance. In the event that there are future developments such as university campuses or other transit-oriented developments which seek to incorporate an accessory transit wait station on site. This amendment is consistent with the master plan, and the staff is recommending modified approval of zoning docket 118.
Thank you. First speaker, Jared Munster.
Hi, good afternoon. Jared Munster, Director of Safety and Permits and City of New Orleans Liaison to the Regional Transit Authority. We are just showing up in support of this amendment. We believe that this will provide the ability for the RTA to provide much needed transit shelters across the city. And we are in the process of developing additional code-based standards to make sure that all of these things are reviewed in a consistent manner, that we're looking at design, we're looking at use of the public right-of-way, we're looking at the ability to accommodate these in light of other public amenities and improvements that may be on the right-of-way as well. So with that, I'm here for any questions you all might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Candace Mark.
Good afternoon. My name is Candace Marty. I'm the Director of Marketing and Customer Experience for the RTA. We are in support of this. This will provide a faster, more streamlined process for addressing shelter requests. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Matthew Hendrickson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Matthew Hendrickson, 2100 Ridley Castle Haley Boulevard. I'm the Policy Director for Ryan New Orleans. We are the region's leading advocacy organization. We fully support the recommendations of the CPC staff report to remove transit wait stations from the CZO. Currently, the RTA must get a conditional use permit for every single new bus shelter and bench. This is an unnecessary and burdensome process that takes up much of the RTA and city's time. It's also a very expensive one, costing nearly $1,200 per permit per stop. So because of these hurdles, the RTA has stopped installing shelters at bus stops, which has a very direct and negative impact on our transit riders who not only experience long wait times at transfer points, but also routinely are exposed to harsh weather conditions such as extreme heat and sudden downpours. This amendment will simplify and streamline this approval process, making it easier for transit shelters and seating that the riders deserve, which is a big win. So we also support the recommendations to supplant the current permitting process, ensure that there are clear set guidelines for the bus shelters and benches, Designs of shelters and mentioned designs should be pre-approved to eliminate an expensive and time-consuming process. Advertising which pays for the construction of all new bus stop infrastructure will be kept to commercial areas and major state highways. This will ensure that designs can vary depending on the neighborhoods to make sure we are sensitive to historic context and to keep advertisements out of quiet residential neighborhoods. And as we go forward, we'll just continue to support this process to make it easier to provide the safe and comfortable amenities for transit riders. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in favor to speak in support of the docket matter? If not, are there any opponents? If not, that will close the public hearing portion for this docket matter.
Mr. Chair, in the spirit of Ride New Orleans and RTA being on the same page on this one, I move for approval of zoning docket 118, the text amendment. Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Green, second by Commissioner Weberg. Any comments? If not, call to vote. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? It's been moved. Next docket matter, zoning 00218.
Zoning docket 00218 is a request by City Council Motion M17551 for a text amendment to the comprehensive zoning ordinance relative to the VIP Business Industrial Park District were applied in planning districts 9 and 10 to allow all of the uses allowed by LI Light Industrial District. The staff found that the intent of the proposed text amendment was to expand the range of uses allowed in the VIP districts that are located in planning districts 9 and 10. However, staff does not find the proposed expansion of uses to be consistent with the master plan or with the purpose of the VIP Business Industrial Park District, which is, quote, intended to provide appropriate locations of certain types of businesses and light industrial facilities in well-designed landscaped campus environments and to provide employment opportunities near residential areas. In the base regulations for the VIP district, there are 57 permitted uses, 45 by right and 12 by as conditional use. Similarly, the LI Light Industrial District regulations contain a total of 65 uses that are permitted by right or by conditional use. There are 44 by right or conditional uses that are common to both zoning districts. At issue then are the 30 uses that are permitted in the LI district but not in the VIP district. Most of those 30 uses are appropriate in an LI future land use district or designated area, but they are too intensive in nature to be deemed appropriate for a BC Business Center future land use designation. The proposal is not consistent with the master plan or the purpose of the VIP Business Industrial Park District, and staff recommends denial of zoning docket 00218.
Thank you. Did I receive any cards for any speakers? If there's anyone in support of the documented, you may speak at this time. Anyone in opposition for any information purposes? I will close the public hearing portion for this docket matter. Commissioners?
Make a motion to support staff recommendation.
Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Weberg, second by Commissioner Isaacson. Any comments? All in favor of, call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Zoning docket 00318.
Zoning docket 318 is a request by City Council motion number M17552 for a text amendment to the comprehensive zoning ordinance to incorporate recommendation 3 provided on page 100 and part K of the City Planning Commission's adult live performance venue study in accordance with the City Planning Commission staff recommendation on page 96 and Part F of the study to reduce the number of adult live performance venues through attrition via the imposition of a cap limiting the number of adult live performance venues in the Bucharest Entertainment District to one adult live performance venue per either block face between intersecting streets, and a cap on the total number of adult live performance venues in the VCE district equal to the current number of existing adult live performance venues in the VCE district. The intent of the proposed text amendment is to address the density of adult live performance venues along 7 blocks of Bourbon Street between Iberville and St. Anne Streets that constitute the VCE district. Because the administration is working to possibly formulate a broader package of regulations for adult live performance venues, the staff thinks it's worthwhile holding the proposed motion and having it considered with the entirety of the proposal coming from the administration. Therefore, the staff recommends deferral of zoning docket 318 until the February 6th City Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. We received a recommendation by staff for deferral until February 6, 2018. However, if there's anyone here who would like to speak pertaining to this docket matter, you have the opportunity. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, thank you. My name is Daniel Faust, and I live at 400 Burgundy Street. I know that there was going to be a lot of changes, especially in regards to the adult entertainment nightclub employees with Section Dash 5. I'd just like once again to reiterate with the City Planning Commission that there's going to be a lot of effects that fall down on a lot of people who live and work in New Orleans, and to propose and work towards a goal like that, you also have to worry about like workforce transitions, how it affect the economy, and how it affect the lives of certain individuals. So I'm looking forward to what the City Council has to say and everything like that, but please do take into account what's going to happen to a lot of people who are displaced from this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers for zoning docket 318? If not, that concludes the public portion for the zoning docket matter. We received a recommendation by the staff. Commissioners, any motions? A motion by Commissioner Weberg and second by Commissioner Brown. Any comments?
This is an indefinite period of time.
Till the 6th. Any questions or comments for staff? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Zoning docket 418.
Zoning docket 418 is a request by City Council motion M17-557 for a text amendment to the comprehensive zoning ordinance to amend the use permissions in Article 12, Section 12.2.A, Table 12.1, to change a commercial short-term rental from a permitted to a conditional use in the HUB1 Neighborhood Business District and the HUMU Neighborhood Mixed Use District. The comprehensive zoning ordinance short-term rental regulations stem from the City Planning Commission's January 2016 short-term rental study and were implemented by City Council Ordinance Number 27210 MCS adopted on December 1st, 2016. The framework behind these regulations were to discourage short-term rentals in residential areas while encouraging short-term rentals to locate in non-residential districts. As a result, commercial short-term rentals are permitted use in the HUB1 and HUMU districts and most other non-residential districts throughout the city. This text amendment request would make commercial short-term rentals a conditional use in the HUB1 and HUMU districts. As a result, it would be inconsistent with the framework that provides the foundation of the short-term rental regulations. In addition, this would make the use allowances in the HUB1 and HUMU districts different from similar districts including HMC1, HMC2, HMMU, SB1, SB2, and other neighborhood commercial and mixed-use districts where a commercial short-term rental is a permitted use. While the staff found that about 1/4, 162 out of 611 of the city's commercial short-term rental licenses are located in the HUB1 and HUMU districts, this is a similar total count with about 1/3 of the license density when compared to commercial short-term rentals in the historic core non-residential districts and the central business districts. Since there is not a unique issue related to the short-term rentals in the HUB1 and HUMU districts, the staff does not find a need to regulate commercial short-term rentals differently than the similar non-residential districts. The staff is concerned with some of the potential unintended consequences resulting from this text amendment request. The purpose of the request is to resolve concerns about short-term rentals at one property, but this request would have citywide implications. The proposed change would make it more difficult to get a commercial short-term rental license than it would a temporary short-term rental license in the surrounding residential neighborhoods. Therefore, by discouraging commercial short-term rentals in the non-residential district, it could encourage more short-term rentals in nearby residential districts. The impact of this request are not yet known and should only be undertaken after a more thorough analysis. The staff agrees that changes to the short-term rental regulations will be required. However, these changes should only be made after a comprehensive study of the effectiveness of the existing regulations have been completed. At that point, a comprehensive text amendment package can be adopted to fix any issues with the current regulations in a fair and complete manner. In addition, the conditional use process is not the most appropriate tool for regulating the impacts and concentration of short-term rentals, and the study would propose alternative regulations such as a limit of commercial short-term rentals per lot or block. At this time, the staff finds the text amendment request does not meet the text amendment approval criteria. Therefore, the staff recommends denial of zoning docket 418.
Thank you. I have 2 cards in opposition, but is there anyone here in support of zoning docket 418? Is there anyone here to speak, to offer information for zoning docket 418? If not, we'll move to the opposition. Our first speaker, Jacob Gardner.
My part should have actually only been for the next zoning docket issue, so I
Next speaker, Michael Duplanter. Is there anyone else in opposition?
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. I want to commend the staff on an incredibly thorough staff report.
Please state your name and address.
Oh, sorry. Meg Lusto, Executive Director of VC Pora, addresses 816 North Rampart Street. Again, I want to commend the staff. The staff report really examined all of the angles and the implications of what this text change would do, and I think that the conclusions that they came to really bear full evaluation. This wouldn't affect the quarter directly, but VC Pora has been extremely interested in the impact of the short-term rental legislation as a whole on the city, and we have been dealing with this for about 20 years. So we have continued to watch how the effects of legislation have unfolded throughout the city, and I would say that we agree that this is going to cause a consistency issue with the legislation that was passed. It's going to wind up being something that's in conflict with the actual legislation. It would be inconsistent with the other commercial zoning districts in the city, of which there are many. And then there are the unintended consequences, namely that this change would vest properties that go through the conditional use process and get short-term rental conditional uses. Those rights would be vested. One of the major concerns that the public had when this legislation was moving through the process was that we actually asked for non-vesting language in the legislation to make it crystal clear to everyone that getting a short-term rental license was a privilege and not a right. We were assured by the city council that that was the case and that it would never be undone. This legislation perhaps, or this proposal perhaps unintentionally, would change that. And any project that went through the conditional use process and got a commercial short-term rental license via this text amendment, if approved, would have that land use right vested in perpetuity. Would go with the land, not with the owner. We also agree with the staff that the effects of the legislation on the city as a whole need to be evaluated. Unfortunately, everything that we predicted would happen has happened, and neighborhoods are being gobbled up by short-term rentals. The temporary category has not proven to be a bulwark against investors buying properties for the sole purpose of turning them into short-term rentals. And as a 14-year resident of Treme, I can speak to that. I know that's not what's before you, but I do think that that's something that hopefully the staff and the commission will take a look at, and maybe the council will encourage you on that. So while I appreciate the intent and the desire of the council's motion, I think that the effects would be damaging long-term and perhaps are an overreaction to a problem that I understand was localized at one location in the Lower Garden District. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? If not, that closes the public hearing portion for the zoning document matter. Commissioners, do you have any questions on a motion?
I move for denial in accordance with staff recommendation.
Moved by Commissioner Steve, second by Commissioner Brown. Any comments? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next zoning document matter 518.
Zoning docket 00518 is a request by City Council Motion M17558 for a zoning change from an HUB1A Historic Urban Neighborhood Business District to an HUMU Historic Urban Neighborhood Mixed Use District, and a conditional use for the retail sales of packaged alcoholic beverages. The municipal addresses are 2042 Petrania Street and 1457 Josephine Street. The applicant proposes to rezone the subject property to allow for a grocery store with 4,489 square feet of retail space on the first floor of an existing mixed-use building with the retail sales of packaged alcohol. The current HUB1A Neighborhood Business District zoning of this site does allow for a retail store by right, but the addition of the sale of packaged alcohol is not allowed. In order for the property to sell packaged alcohol, the petition property requires HUMU zoning or some other commercial zoning that allows alcoholic beverage retail sales, either as a permitted or conditional use. The HUMU mixed-use district requested by the applicant does not meet all of the approval standards and is considered a spot zone and must meet the criteria for the Commission's spot zoning policy, which requires the applicant to seek the most restrictive zoning district, allowing neighborhood-oriented commercial use. The existing HUB1 district is the most restrictive zoning. Therefore, the staff recommends denial of zoning docket 00518. Since the conditional use for the retail sales of packaged alcohol is predicated on the zoning change, the staff cannot support the conditional use application.
Thank you so much. Nicole?
Hi, Nicole Weber, 2131 Bienville Street and 2348 St. Thomas Street. Here on behalf of the property owners, we are working on a good neighbor agreement with the residents and would like more time, so asking for a deferral in order to work on that and then bring you all, hopefully our goal is to bring you all to the next commission meeting and executed good neighbor agreement.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting a deferral. However, I have 6 cards in opposition. So those speakers, if you're here in opposition, you are allowed an opportunity to actually speak. So if you would like to speak in opposition, starting with Jacob Gardner, please come forward.
Hey, good afternoon, Commissioners. Jacob Gardner here at 1441 Jackson Avenue. And I'm here as a personally affected neighbor, being a block away, and on behalf of the Garden District Association, on which I sit on the board. We have no problem with the request for deferral in light of our ongoing negotiations with the owner of Mazzaras, and we, therefore, we join in their request to defer for 2 weeks to allow us to continue working through the issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Did Zara's sell package liquor?
Yes, in its previous existence.
That was not meant to be a leading or pointed question, just pure curiosity.
All right, thank you. And thank you to the staff for attention to preparing the report.
Any other speakers? Martin?
Martin Main.
And if you're here in opposition and you don't want to speak, it's okay, but I'm just giving you that opportunity. If you are here and present and you want to speak, you can just come forward.
Yes, I think Barbara Fitzgerald,
Martin.
Martin Mannion, Stephen Kreller. Stephen Kreller, we agree with the move-ins and request.
Okay. What about Jacqueline Benton? Ms. Landry, Shirley Landry? Okay, and Barbara Fitzgerald? You gonna pass it as well? Okay.
Quick question for staff. They mentioned 2 weeks. Is that, since I don't think they're talking about anything that would affect your recommendation, but should we go a month because of all the considerations we just talked about an hour ago?
I agree with what you said, that the issue of a neighborhood agreement is, aside from our review, it wouldn't affect our recommendation.
So 2 weeks is okay.
Okay, so that closes the public hearing portion for this docket matter. Commissioners, we have a recommendation by the applicant for deferral to January 23rd CPC meeting.
So move. Just real quick, since I'm gonna obviously be for the deferral, but since a good neighbor agreement doesn't affect what staff recommendation will be, is there anything that could, is there some revised application or?
We have a second, so we can have discussion.
Second.
What is,
sorry. Yeah.
Motion by Commissioner Hughes, second by Commissioner Green.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
A good neighbor agreement is irrelevant to what you're looking at. Is that what you said?
Correct. So this is an application, I'm not sure if you were here at the time, it's an application that is essentially identical to one that was considered a couple of months ago that was applied for by the applicant. This one was introduced by the council member. And the council members is a companion to the one that we just previously heard. And the idea was that there was concern raised that by changing the zoning to HUMU would allow for short-term rentals by right on this property. There was concern about the number of short-term rentals on this property. So this is the attempt here by repackaging it and sending it back was to eliminate the possibility of or requiring conditional use for the short-term rentals in this facility, but then allow the zoning to be reconsidered in that context. So from our perspective as staff, we had recommended denial previously, and so I think our response would be consistent.
And it's not covered by the prohibition against raising the same motion twice because it comes from the city council rather than the private applicant. So it's otherwise more or less identical?
Except for short-term rentals, right?
Well, short-term rentals are implicit in the zoning, the HUMU. So both applications were for changing the current zoning to HUMU.
And what is the more restrictive zoning that could have allowed for this had they asked for it?
So what we had recommended was HUB1A, which is the least restrictive zoning that would allow the grocery store. And that, I think, was ultimately what was adopted in the last go-round.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember because I did.
This one includes a conditional use, which is the original one, which is the zoning change. This includes the zoning change and a conditional use for packaged alcohol sales.
So they could go to the more restrictive still. And that would make it more
the more restrictive does not allow for packaged alcohol sales.
And staff, can you clarify, even with a neighborhood agreement, it's a non-binding legal document?
So neighborhood agreements are private agreements between a neighborhood organization and an applicant. So those are the only two parties to the agreement. They're the only parties that can enforce the agreement. So we typically stay away from those because we don't have the legal authority to enforce them. And so that's why it's not irrelevant to the parties, obviously, but for our purpose and for our review, we don't take it into consideration because they're not legal commitments that we can enforce.
Any other questions or comments from any other commissioners? We have a motion by Commissioner Hughes, second by Commissioner Green for deferral for January 23rd. If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion is carried. Zoning docket 618.
Zoning docket 618 is a request by City Council Motion M17599 for a text amendment to the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to establish a new interim zoning district, IZD, to be named the Residential District Preservation Interim Zoning District, the intent of which is to establish hostels as conditional uses in area zone C1 General Commercial District where the use would be adjacent to a residential district. The C1 district is present in numerous neighborhoods throughout the city, including, but not limited to, New Orleans East, Uptown, Mid-City, Algiers, Holy Cross, and Central City. The proposed interim zoning district is intended to temporarily limit the development of hostels, currently a permitted use in C1 districts, to a conditional use in those districts that are adjacent to a residential district. This would affect 44 of the 46 C1 districts in the city. The staff's understanding is that the IZD was proposed to address the development of a hostel in the New Orleans East neighborhood. Staff does not believe an IZD that has citywide implication is an appropriate measure to address opposition to one particular development. Further, the staff does not believe this IZD meets the applicable approval standards for text amendments per Article 4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. The change would not result in any substantial benefit to the city as a whole and does not serve to promote the public welfare for citizens of the city. The current zoning regulations are consistent with the master plan and were put in place following the public process of adopting the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Hostels are consistent with other permitted uses in the C1 district, such as hotels and commercial short-term rentals, and align with the intent of this district. The staff believes the current regulations can adequately guide future developments and promote quality design, healthy environmental systems, and pedestrian safety. Therefore, staff recommends denial of zoning docket 618.
Thank you. I did not receive any cards in support or opposition. If there's anyone here to speak in regards to zoning docket 618, please come forward if you're in support. For information purposes only, or opposition. If not, that closes the public hearing portion for zoning docket 618. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff or a motion?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
A motion to accept staff's recommendation by Commissioner Weaver. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second by Commissioner Isaacson. Any comments? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposite? Of those that oppose? The motion is carried. Commissioner Steig is stepping out of the room to recuse himself for zoning docket 718.
Zoning docket 007-18 is a request by AM Realty LLC in the City of New Orleans for conditional use to permit a 956-unit mini warehouse facility in an MU1 medium intensity mixed-use district with an enhancement corridor design overlay at 4866 Chapatula Street. The project's located on the riverside, 4800 block of Chapatula Street, between Lyon Street and Upper Line Street, including all of Square 78, with the exception of 6 existing residential structures which lie at the northwest corner of the square. The project will also include a portion of the South Front Street right-of-way. The applicant has a pending request for disposition of public property regarding this right-of-way in order that it can be used as part of the development site. The petition site is located within a mixed-use neighborhood along a major corridor where residential uses are mixed in with commercial uses of various intensities. Proposed uses in general compliance with master plan and general purpose and intent of the applicable zoning district regulations. The additional details is needed to ensure detailed compliance with all applicable zoning requirements. Therefore, the staff does recommend approval of the zoning docket 007-18, subject to 13 provisos listed in this report, finding that the proposal is generally consistent with the 21st century and with the general purpose and intent of applicable zoning district regulations. If it successfully addresses issues of compatibility in both design character and use.
Thank you. I received 2 cards for the zoning docket. The architect and the applicant, if you want to come in a particular order, you can. Just please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, sir. My name is Gordon Kolb. I'm president of GHK Developments Inc. here in New Orleans, and I'm here today. First of all, thanks members of the staff and members of the commission. We are here today on behalf of my partners to present to you the proposed climatized self-storage project located at 4666 Chapatulas, which is the closed Guyot sanitary supply buildings. We have had a very productive conditional use process starting out with NPP meetings, and we answered questions and addressed any concerns that were voiced by the neighbors. We have had equally productive meetings with the Design Review Committee, Planning Advisory Committee, and the City Planning staff. Our project is bound by Upper Line, Chapatulas, Lyons, and South Front Street. As part of our development, we're going through the disposition process to acquire a portion of South Front Street that is bound by Upper Line to the west and Lyons Street to the east. Our proposed development is combining 13 lots that currently house the closed Guyot commercial buildings. Our architect, Jared Ducote, can describe more of the development in further detail and answer any technical questions that you may have. In closing, after review the City Planning Commission's staff report, the staff report recommended approval. We thoroughly support the staff's report as well as the complete 13 provisos outlined in the staff report, and will work with the staff to address any technical issues that they may have. Again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Planning Commission members and their staff for the assistance and the guidance that the staff has provided us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jared Ducote. My address is 125 West Romana Street, Pensacola, Florida. I just want to say we've been working on the project for a couple of months. Staff has been great to work with. We've gone through an orderly process. Most of the provisos are either technical items that we've already addressed, or we're pretty confident so far that we can meet those with planning staff. So I'm really here to thank the staff for their help to this point and to answer any questions that there are.
Thank you. Is there anyone in opposition of zoning docket 718? Is there any speaking in opposition? If not, they will close the public hearing portion for this docket matter.
Mr. Chair, I move for acceptance of staff recommendation of approval on zoning docket 718.
It's been moved by Commissioner Green for approval of the approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Brown. Any comments or questions? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you.
We'll now move to zoning docket 818.
Zoning docket 00818 is a request by Landcraft LLC for conditional use to permit a standard restaurant that sells alcoholic beverages in an SLB1 suburban Lake Area neighborhood business district and a CT corridor transformation design overlay district on Square 15, Lot 9A in the 7th Municipal District, bounded by Pontchartrain Boulevard, West Harrison Avenue, Avenue C, and 26th Street. The municipal addresses are 117 West Harrison Avenue and 6300 through 6304 Pontchartrain Boulevard. The site is undergoing redevelopment with a 3,521 square foot commercial building. The applicant proposes for the structure to contain a standard restaurant that will sell alcoholic beverages. A standard restaurant without the sale of alcoholic beverages is a permitted use in the SLB1 district, but a standard restaurant with the sale of alcoholic beverages is a conditional use. The staff believes that if properly managed, the standard restaurant with the sale of alcoholic beverages should be no different in impact than if it did not sell alcoholic beverages. The request is consistent with the master plan and meets the conditional use criteria. Therefore, the staff is supportive of the application and recommends approval of zoning docket 00818 subject to 2 provisos.
Thank you. Our first speaker in support for this docket matter is Nicole Webb.
Hello again, Nicole Weber, 2131 Bienville Street. I represent the property owner as well as the restaurateur, Danny Milan, who is rushing to get over here. He's the current proprietor of Cava on Harrison Avenue, and so this would be his second location to open in Lakeview to have a restaurant. The building is already permitted and currently under construction. It's been through design review approval, so the location of parking in the parking lot has already gone through that review and following the requirements of the city code, building code standards, as well as public works. What you're going to hear, I don't want to speak on behalf of the neighbors, but from the meetings that we've had and discussions we've had, they are not necessarily opposed with the restaurant having alcohol. They are very concerned about the current traffic conditions. So I put them in touch with Department of Public Works, who's undergoing a traffic study to deal with the current traffic conditions at Pontchartrain Boulevard and Harrison Avenue. The problem being, and they'll talk more about this, is that cars illegally turn from the right lane to the left lane when heading westbound on Harrison. I have a letter from the Lakeview Civic Improvement Association, and unfortunately, because of the holidays, they weren't able to meet until January 5th, so they weren't able to get their letter of support in by the deadline. But it reads, the purpose of this letter is to report to you that the Lakeview Civic Improvement Association met on Friday, January 5th, and we reviewed the request, etc., etc. The LCIA board voted to support this request, and it's signed Michelle Douglas, president. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. Anyone else in support of this zoning docket matter? Anyone else here in support? If not, we'll move to the opposition. Rick Phillips.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Phillips. I live at 121 West Harrison. If you look at the picture, I'm directly to the left right there. My concern is that's my driveway coming out. Currently, traffic coming across Pontchartrain from Harrison to West Harrison. Many of them exceed the speed limit in order to make the green light. I have pulled out where I'm partially in my lane, only to have the horn blown at me. People go around me. I feel right now with the current situation, it's difficult to get out of my driveway. Now, the proposed restaurant parking, my understanding, there's going to be an 8 to 10 foot buffer between my driveway and the entrance exit to the restaurant itself. This will allow me some room, but with traffic coming in and only having a limited number of parking within the parking lot, in order to get out, they're going to have to first negotiate, turn around, then come out the same way. We're still going to have the issue with the light there at Pontchartrain and Harrison and West Harrison with traffic coming across. Additionally, between the driveway of the restaurant and punch train, there's gonna be enough room for 3, possibly 4 cars to park there. That's gonna obstruct my view coming out of my driveway even more so than what it is now, for me exiting safely. So I would like to have this taken under consideration when granting the alcohol permit.
So you're not opposed to a restaurant?
Not opposed to a restaurant, but I want to make sure that I can get in and out of my driveway safely without cars coming across or cars entering and exiting the restaurant, blocking my view of cars coming across that intersection. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Richard Lane. And if I'm correct, Ms. Briggs, someone ceding time to you?
We all ceding time.
All three, can you state your names?
Evelyn Redmond.
Catherine Moraldo, Marcel Briggs.
All right, so you have 8 minutes.
Yes, thank you. And I am Richard Lane of 420 20th Street, West Lakeview. I wish I had gone before Rick. Rick makes some great points, but I'm hoping to address those and a few others. It amazes me how a lot of permitting can occur without a more comprehensive overview of a situation before looking at the minutia of one particular standalone. So please allow me to read my prepared notes read aloud with my allotted time by others. We are here at the recommendation of Councilmember Guidry's Chief of Staff and by members of the LCIA Zoning Subcommittee, in which I'm a participant, with a summary submission of many West Lakeview residents to their concerns regarding current and long-standing traffic hazards at the intersection of West Harrison Avenue, Pontchartrain Boulevard, and primarily within the 1200 block of West Harrison Avenue, which is the main entrance into all of West Lakeview. The first 100 block of West Harrison was residential before Katrina. And since Katrina, the increased traffic as a rapid commercial development with inadequate parking in the first 100 block of West Harrison has clearly exceeded what this narrow, congested corridor can safely accommodate. The new construction of a large restaurant on this busy corner on 2 lots that were previously residential has highlighted this problem and has the neighbors in this section of Lakeview who must use this street daily very concerned. The traffic hazards will be unprecedented for this small street, and this affects every pedestrian, bicyclist, and motorist. Despite the fact that the developer never met with residents, now we citizens and residents are presented with a building that successfully went through the permitting process for structure and associated parking. However, the parking requirements for this building were based only on building operations square footage. This is not, and was not planned as a small office building. No requirements or provisions were set forth based on the type of this initially planned business with respect to the amount of projected patronage parking, estimated at 90 max, with possibly 20 staff parking spaces. It is impossible to accommodate their projected parking needs within the dedicated on-site spaces without incredible congestion of limited on-street parking and, more importantly, the flow of their incoming and exiting patronage traffic via one single driveway onto Harrison Avenue. In an MPP meeting with local residents, the owner of the proposed business was himself sensitive to and concerned about inadequate parking and traffic impact. He stated that he was in quest for additional secured and dedicated parking, and to date we have heard nothing further concerning the parking or the DPW traffic design study. Now, if this isn't enough of a traffic concern in and of itself, we now have the request to add conditional use alcohol permit to the mix. We are concerned. To wit, residents are supportive of commercial business in Lakeview, and we are not opposed to the responsible provision of alcohol, except where and when business enterprise creates a level of excessive congestion greater than parking and traffic can safely support, which is clearly exacerbated by the addition of alcohol. We will now show you the sign, the picture of this intersection. This is a midweek on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. This is what we're confronted with already now. We have requested provisos. We, the residents and citizens of Lakeview, respectfully and coherently request that the Planning Commission defer passage of the subject requested conditional use permit until and unless both of the following provisions can be met. The owner of the proposed business operation must commit dedicated and permanent parking areas supportive of their projected patronage and staff parking requirements. 2, given the business sole combined entrance and exit onto Harrison Avenue, a comprehensive DPW review of the existing and anticipated corridor congestion with related traffic signal controls be changed or modified to accommodate the aforementioned items and issues of concern. A list of the referenced hazards has been previously submitted to this commission for their study and review. I thank you for your kind attention and concerns to the matters before us.
Thank you.
I think my 8 minutes are about up.
You have 3 minutes and 39 seconds.
Also presented that was submitted to the commission were the items of concern about many westbound vehicles in the turning lane that only go straight, as this gentleman here started to indicate. The turning lane on Harrison Avenue is aligned with a single westbound traffic lane on Harrison to the right lane of Harrison. It's the traffic design and control right now, ladies and gentlemen, is horrific. Horrific. In fact, I need a drink. We'll drive down.
All right. Thank you for that.
No, I'm not.
Thank you for that. But I'll ask staff, I think the application before us is only necessarily for a standard restaurant that sells alcohol, correct? Or
correct. The standard restaurant that does not sell alcohol is permitted by right, and that is why they have been issued building permits and have proceeded with construction, because that is permitted under the existing zoning. What is before you all is the operational ability to serve alcohol in conjunction with the permitted restaurant.
Right. So Mr. Blank, I think we hear your concerns, but the application that is in front of us right now is solely for selling of alcohol at this standard restaurant, not necessarily pertaining towards any type of design or layout or traffic. But I'm more than sure staff can direct you to the right department to talk to raise any concerns about traffic.
We feel that this traffic situation should have been taken into consideration before a permit was granted for this level of traffic patronage.
And absolutely, I understand your concern, but this is not the appropriate body to necessarily correct or change anything towards traffic. So I hear your concern.
Is our request for deferment unreasonable until these 2 items could be addressed?
That will be up for any other commissioner to decide once we close the public hearing portion.
As we stated, we are not opposed to commercial development that benefits our area. Please understand that.
Okay.
And we're not opposed to alcohol serving, but we are concerned about the level of traffic interference, safety, concern, and engineering and control. And I think that's a valid point to be presented. Do you have any questions?
I was going to ask, I didn't see it in the report, but just for clarification, there are no waivers on parking requested either, are there?
Thank you.
All right. We have one more card in opposition. Roberta Phillips. Please state your name and address for the record.
Roberta Phillips, 121 West Harrison Avenue. That is our house. That house has been in my family since 1961. I have personally lived there since 1984. Mr. Phillips is my husband. I understand that we're here for an alcohol permit, which we are not totally opposed to. I was not in favor of a restaurant at all. However, we are aggravated at the point now that these plans were done without any consideration to the residents. All of a sudden, it popped up. This is Danny. He's the restaurateur, and you can meet with him without any consideration for us. The intersection is the site for many tragic accidents in the past. And this is a main concern for us. Not only for us taking our lives in our hands trying to get out of the driveway, because we can't see around the parked cars. What is within your guidelines and your regulations that allow parking for all the businesses that now have popped up on the street, the people don't want to use. They don't want to go behind these buildings. And when they do and they don't have parking, it's hard for them to come back out. Then they park on the street. I can't see above the cars to get out. One day I'm going to be creamed. And that is a main concern for us. Not only for these people that live in the neighborhood, that are trying to get to their homes, but for us mainly because we're going to live next door. And it is, I would really respectfully request that you revisit that and look at that before this building is completed. I don't know what the solution would be. I mean, we've talked about having an entrance off of Pontchartrain Boulevard. I don't know, but this has all been done without our knowledge, without our input. And had our input been there, maybe they could have come up with a different footprint for the building with access to parking from more than one spot. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition for this zoning document? If not, the applicant, Ms. Weber, you have time for rebuttal.
Thank you. So to let you know, Landcraft owns the property. My client, Danny Milan, the restaurateur, he has the lease agreement to take over the property as a restaurant, which it's being built as regardless if he's involved or not. His stipulation in his lease agreement is to be able to sell alcohol with food. So in terms of meeting with the neighbors, I'm kind of a little shocked because when we first sent out the NPP notices, Rick and Roberta called me. We talked for a very long time. We had a meeting on October 28th at Cava with Danny. And after our meeting, they sent me a letter that they had also posted online on Nextdoor Neighbor that says, the questions and concerns we have been answered to our satisfaction. That's located on page 28, I believe, of the report that you have. Also, the staff reviewed concerns about traffic and said that it would not, on page 10, that it would not have a negative impact on the neighborhoods. All these things have been reviewed. I understand that the neighbors are concerned. Unfortunately, there is, the plans are already in place, the building's already under construction, and I don't know if the things that they're asking for, which having, let's say, a parking egress and ingress on Pontchartrain would even be allowed by law. So, thank you.
Thank you. That now closes the public hearing portion. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff or the motion?
It's always tough when neighbors who have concerns come before us because we all own our properties, we live in them. But in this particular instance, it's important to stay at the point of what brings this to our body. The restaurant is not what we're determining today because through a process, especially after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of debate went on and a lot of determinations were made with the support of area residents that there were some things that they wanted to have zoned a certain way. So in light of that fact, with sensitivity to the neighbor's concerns, I'm asking for approval of zoning docket number 818 because the owner or the lessor of the land has met all the requirements that have been put forth before him relative to a restaurant.
So that's a motion by Commissioner Green. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Commissioner Steig is second.
So when I second the motion, I think Commissioner Green, unfortunately, said it correctly that out of fairness to the applicant, we can only look at what's before us. And I know that's totally disappointing to the neighbors because, so what happened was the laws are there and the restaurant guy or the owner built and has plans to build and it's all legal. And so the only thing before us is to whether to let him serve liquor there. And so the driveway apparently is going to be where it's going to be if we say yes or if we say no. And there's going to be a restaurant. So what I would, I think the redress really, and it may not work, is to go to the streets people and try to get some kind of buffer zone or no park, or like right at your driveway, sir, where cars can't park, maybe where that silver one is, so that you can see. But the thing's gonna be built because it apparently has all the permits, and we're not a permitting agency, so I know it sounds overly technical, but we can only look at what we're legally authorized to do. And all we're legally authorized to do is look at whether they should have a liquor permit or not. So that's why I'm seconding the motion and going to be in favor of it, because I don't think whether they have the liquor or not addresses any of y'all's concerns. So I feel it would be unfair to deny the liquor permit on the basis of concerns that really have nothing to do with the liquor.
And I'll agree and support the motion as well. And I'm very familiar with this section, sharing your concerns. But while I do share your concerns, I don't know, except for saying work with the staff and directing you to where I propose to go in this building to help you solve the issues of traffic and parking. It sounds like the opposition is not with the fact that it could be a restaurant as much as it is with how it might affect what's going on in the road, which they're, by right of zoning, allowed to do.
Can I?
Yes.
Well, yeah, perfect for everybody. That's what I don't do.
I just want to follow up on Commissioner Brown's statement. If you all want to get in touch with our office, I'm more than happy to help facilitate a meeting with you and DPW. I don't know if you've had success in meeting with them or identifying who you should speak to, but we can certainly help facilitate that conversation. I think that's really where the solution is going to be.
This is the first meeting I've been aware of that, for the public outside of meeting with Danny and them.
Right. So the public portion is also, we can't necessarily have any dialogue unless there's a question from the commission.
Was there a point that you felt had to be made?
I wanted to follow up. So at the NPP meeting, when the traffic concerns were brought up, I took all the email addresses that were provided at the NPP meeting. Many of the neighbors are here today, and I put them directly in touch with the director or the liaison for public affairs for DPW, and they are undergoing, according to her email correspondence, with the neighbors. And I also put them in touch with the city council member's office and Lakeview Civic Improvement Association on their traffic concerns, current traffic concerns. And she did respond that it was undergoing a traffic study. So.
Isn't that putting the cart before the horse, though?
So the public portion is actually closed right now, and we have a motion by Commissioner Green and a second by Commissioner Steve. So at this point, if there's no other questions from any other commissioners, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you.
Zoning docket 00918.
The next item is zoning docket 009-18 for a property located at 4948 Sheffield Shore Highway, bounded by Sheffield Shore Highway, France and Old Chantilly Roads, and Desire Parkway. This is a request for a conditional use to permit above ground floor dwelling units in a C2 auto-oriented commercial district. Pursuant to Article 15, Section 15.2.a, Table 15.1, above ground floor dwellings are a conditional use in a C2 auto-oriented commercial district. The proposed conditional use to permit dwelling units above ground floor commercial is not in conflict with the master plan and is consistent with the purpose of the C2 auto-oriented commercial district. The proposed use is consistent with the general purpose and intent of the applicable zoning district regulations, and there are no anticipated negative impacts on the surrounding future. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 009-18, subject to 13 provided.
I have one card in support. Nicole,
Hi,
Hi, just here representing the property owner and the developer behind me, Ryan Bates. We are working through the process, have already gone before DAC, and just want understanding that moving forward, it's more of a question for the staff, but that anything that needs to be processed unless changed from the conditional use would be able to be done on the staff level. My client's concerned that he'll have to come before the commission again for any design review. So I just wanted to clarify that on the record.
So are you asking, or are you just clarifying it for the record?
Just clarifying for the record that this would just be before staff level moving forward after you all vote on it.
So it's hard to speak to a hypothetical design change. It really depends on the nature of the change.
For no changes, sorry, for no changes.
Okay, then I'm not clear what the question is.
So just, I think that it was just his concern that he's gonna have to come back before the commission again, even if there's no changes, and so.
No,
just
so
being
the
clear
standard
that,
process,
yeah.
just so everyone's clear, is that this will, once the commission acts, this will proceed to city council. If the city council will act, they will adopt an ordinance that contains provisos. The end thing you have to do is give us a version of the plans that show you are complying with those provisos. So if there's, one of the provisos mentions a permeable open space requirement, the plans would show where that permeable open space is. That's done administratively. There's no public hearing or other meeting to go to. It's simply providing plans that show that you are complying with the law. We approve them administratively, and that completes the process.
Does that make a motion to approve based on the proviso?
Just one question for that. Does that clarify?
Yeah, absolutely clarify.
So, is there anyone else in support? Is there anyone else in opposition for this zoning document matter? If not, that closes the public hearing portion. Any motions or comments from any commissioners?
I'd just like to make a comment as someone who grew up in Pontchartrain Park and who has seen that building underutilized for so many decades. It's just good to see a developer coming in with a very favorable project. And I think that having some activity in that area will enhance some of that vacant property that needs to be developed. So I'm proud to move to adopt staff's recommendation on zoning docket 918.
Second. Moved by Commissioner Green, second by Commissioner Isaacson. Any comments? I call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you.
That brings us to our last document matter, 15017.
Subdivision docket 15017 is a request by Rodney Cordova to re-subdivide lot 14 into lots 14A, 14B, Square 13, Lynn Huber subdivision in the 3rd Municipal District bounded by Dwyer Road, Lynn Huber Drive, Drew Street, and the eastern boundary of the Lynn Huber subdivision. The municipal address is 4859 Lynn Huber Drive. The applicant requests to subdivide the existing lot into 2 lots to construct 2 family dwellings on each lot. Both proposed lots would be deficient of the 5,000 square foot lot area requirement of the SRD district for 2 family dwellings, and proposed lot 14A would create a greater deficiency in lot depth over the existing condition that would also require variance. The proposed subdivision would not constitute a general improvement of the original plat and would subdivide a lot that currently complies with the area requirements of the CZO into 2 lots that do not. The staff recognizes that this lot is larger than the typical lot along Lynn Huber Drive, and that its shallow depth is not a condition created by the applicant. However, the staff believes there is an alternative configuration that would allow lot 14 to be re-subdivided into 2 lots without the need for a lot area waiver. For these reasons, the staff does not support the proposed subdivision of lot 14 into lots 14A and 14B. And upon receiving the staff's report and recommendation, the applicant has stated his willingness to explore an alternative configuration of the proposed lots to eliminate the need for lot area waivers. The applicant has requested a 1-meeting deferral to the January 23rd City Planning Commission hearing to discuss these alternatives with the CPC staff. So the staff supports this applicant's request for deferral to the January 23rd meeting.
All right, thank you. I don't have any cards for this docket matter. The applicant has requested a deferral to the January 23rd meeting. Is there anyone here to speak in support or opposition? If not, that closes the public hearing portion of this docket matter.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Steve, seconded by Commissioner Brown, for deferral to January 23rd. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposes? The motion is carried for deferral. One more item on the agenda, the adoption of the minutes from December 12th, 2017 meeting.
So moved to adopt those minutes.
It's been moved by Commissioner Green, second by Commissioner Brown. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Favorite motion. Motion to adjourn. I'm just joking. It's so much.
Second for that? No. All in favor? Aye.
Well, I think we lost our forum.
What's gonna, I need tea for this.
Your voice? Yeah.
Oh, really? I was wondering where that coming from, eerie, echoing.
This is the first time to ever come before somebody.